The Shattered Vow, a Forrester wedding deconstructed by deceit. On a sun-drenched California morning, the Forrester estate was a portrait of idyllic perfection. White roses, symbols of new beginnings and pure love, cascaded from every available surface. A string quartet practiced softly on the patio, their melody a gentle promise of the joy to come. This was to be the day that Ridge Forrester, the prodigal son and design titan of the fashion world, would finally reunite with Dr. Taylor Hayes. For weeks, the narrative had been one of destiny fulfilled. After years of a tumultuous, heart-wrenching love triangle with his other great love, Brooke Logan, Ridge had made his choice. He had returned to Taylor, the woman he proclaimed to be his true soulmate, his port in a lifelong storm. Theirs was a love story forged in drama, loss, and improbable reunions, and this wedding was meant to be the final, triumphant chapter, a blank canvas on which they could paint a future of serenity and unwavering commitment. But in the world of the Forresters, a blank canvas is never truly empty. It is always stretched over a frame of past secrets, and the slightest pressure can cause the entire illusion to rip apart. Love for Ridge has rarely been straightforward. His journey with Taylor had been a labyrinth of other marriages, betrayals, and misunderstandings. Yet, nothing in his chaotic history could have prepared him for the cataclysm that was about to unfold. As stylists put the finishing touches on the decor and guests began to arrive in their finest attire, the foundations of Ridge's newfound happiness were about to be pulverized, not by a whisper, but by a thunderous revelation delivered by the one man he trusted above all others, his father. The unraveling thread, a discovery in Europe. The harbinger of doom arrived not in a storm cloud, but from the sun-kissed shores of Europe. Eric Forrester, the venerable patriarch of the dynasty, had been in Monaco and Florence for several weeks. His trip was ostensibly for business, managing an old Forrester International exhibition and meeting with influential European designers. It was in the elegant, history-steeped city of Florence, over a casual glass of Chianti with a designer friend, that the first thread of Taylor's intricate deception was pulled. The friend mentioned, with the nonchalance of shared gossip, that he had seen Ridge's beautiful bride-to-be, Taylor Hayes, in Italy just a few months prior. Eric, ever the proud father, smiled, prepared to hear a compliment. But the friend continued. Taylor hadn't been alone. She was accompanied by a man named Luca Benedetti, a wealthy and charismatic Italian art curator. More disturbingly, the friend swore on his reputation that Taylor had introduced Luca not as a companion or a friend, but as her husband. At first, Eric dismissed it as a misunderstanding, a trick of the language, perhaps, or a misheard introduction in a noisy piazza. Eric was no stranger to deception, especially within the complex web of his own family, but this seemed too audacious, too fundamentally dishonest for the woman his son was about to marry. His instincts, however, honed by decades of navigating corporate and personal betrayals, screamed that something was profoundly wrong. Driven by a terrible premonition, Eric made a decision that would change everything. He hired a discreet private investigator in Florence to dig deeper. It was a painful, reluctant step, an admission that he suspected his future daughter-in-law of the highest order of duplicity. When the investigator's report arrived, it was not a whisper of doubt, but a deafening confirmation. The proof was irrefutable, contained within a stark white envelope that felt unnervingly heavy in his hand. Copies of official marriage records from a quiet civil ceremony in Tuscany, complete with stamps, notary signatures, and legal documentation. Taylor Hayes, using her maiden name, had married Luca Benedetti, and she had never, not once, filed for an annulment or divorce. The woman who was hours away from marrying his son was already, and still, legally married to another man. The fresh start was a lie. The blank canvas was a forgery. The wedding day implosion. Armed with this devastating truth, Eric Forrester abandoned his European schedule and boarded the first flight back to Los Angeles. He stormed into the Forrester estate like a man possessed, his face blanched, his jaw clenched, and his hand trembling as he clutched the white envelope. The music of the string quartet faltered and died. The hum of pleasant conversation ceased. All eyes turned to the patriarch, whose thunderous expression promised not celebration, but reckoning. Ridge. Eric's voice boomed across the grand living room, cutting through the festive atmosphere like a shard of glass. Ridge, confused by his father's sudden and unscheduled appearance, turned. Dad? What's wrong? You weren't due back until after the honeymoon. He could already see the anguish etched on his father's face, the same look he had seen during countless other family crises. Eric didn't pause. He moved Ridge away from the prying ears of the staff and guests. We need to talk. Now, he insisted, his voice low and urgent. It's about Taylor. Ridge's breath caught. He was then led into a private study where Eric wordlessly handed him the envelope. With a growing sense of dread, Ridge opened it and unfolded the documents. He stared at the Italian letterhead, the official seals, his eyes narrowing as he tried to process the impossible words before him. It couldn't be. There had to be an error. What the hell is this? Ridge finally asked, his voice a hollow whisper. Eric's face was a mask of grim finality. It's the truth, son. Taylor is married. The words struck Ridge with the force of a physical blow. He burst from the study and stormed upstairs to the bridal suite. There, he found Taylor, radiant and serene, gazing at her reflection in the mirror. But the moment she saw the fury in his eyes and the papers in his hand, her bridal glow vanished, replaced by a chalk-white mask of terror. The air was sucked out of the room. Explain this, Ridge barked, his voice raw with a mixture of fury and heartbreak that was bleeding through his composure. Were you going to marry me today, knowing you're still legally married to someone else? What the hell, Taylor? Were you going to tell me after the vows? On the honeymoon? Or just never? Tears streamed down her cheeks, ruining the perfect makeup. Ridge, I can explain, she began, her voice trembling. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I was broken. You were with Brooke again. I felt so alone. She explained that her time in Europe was meant to heal, to escape the pain of their last separation. Luca had been there, charming, artistic, and emotionally available. He was a balm for her wounded soul. Their marriage was a spontaneous, impulsive reaction born of emotional fragility. She had never filed for a divorce because, in her heart, she believed that chapter was over the moment she reconnected with Ridge. But for Ridge, it wasn't an explanation. It was a confession of profound betrayal. It's not over, Taylor. You're still married. That's not a mistake. That's a lie. He took a step back, the pain of his trust being so utterly shattered evident in his eyes. Do you have any idea how I feel? How stupid I feel for trusting you again. I told myself this time was different, that you were being honest, that we could finally build something real. You must put an end to this wedding, Eric stated firmly, having followed Ridge upstairs. Now. Before it's too late. Ridge didn't need to be told twice. He turned on his heel and stormed out of the suite, leaving Taylor to collapse in a heap of white silk and shattered dreams. He passed stunned staff and confused guests, his single-minded fury a clear signal that the celebration of love was over. The wedding that never was would become another painful, scandalous chapter in the saga of Ridge Forrester. A dynasty in disarray. The fallout was swift and brutal. The news of Taylor's secret Italian marriage spread through the assembled guests like wildfire, and they left in droves, their whispers and murmurs echoing in the now silent mansion. The media, never far from a Forrester scandal, pounced. Headlines blared across tabloids and news sites. Forrester wedding scandal. Bride still married to European art dealer. Taylor retreated into seclusion, a prisoner in her own home, with paparazzi camped outside. In a desperate attempt to salvage her reputation, she hired a high-powered PR crisis manager, the kind who cleans up messes for Hollywood's biggest stars. The narrative she attempted to spin was one of a victim, a woman recovering from trauma who made a mistake and was now being unfairly demonized. Meanwhile, Ridge sought refuge at Eric's beach house, refusing calls from everyone. He sat for hours by the fire, a glass of scotch in his hand, replaying the betrayal in his mind. But this time, The pain was laced with a profound and weary exhaustion. He was tired. Tired of being caught between two women, of keeping secrets, of the endless emotional turbulence that defined his life. Brooke, having learned of the implosion, was both shocked and quietly satisfied. Though she had reluctantly accepted the wedding for the sake of the family, a part of her had always believed Ridge would return to her. She saw her opportunity, but she played it cautiously, leaving a voicemail for Ridge. "I'm not here to gloat," she said softly. "I'm here if you need me, to talk or just to be." But Ridge didn't call back. The family was fractured. Steffi and Thomas were devastated, caught between their love for their mother and their sympathy for their father's pain. Steffi tried to comfort Taylor, gently reminding her of the history and deep love she shared with Ridge, a bond that a single mistake couldn't erase. Thomas, however, was more direct, confronting his mother with a blunt question. "Why would you marry some Italian guy, Mom? You knew Dad still loved you." Taylor's defense was heartbreakingly simple. "I broke," she admitted. "After years of fighting for Ridge, of being second to Brooke, I thought he would never choose me again. I believed I was starting a new life. For Ridge, the solitude was a crucible. He paced the shoreline, watching the waves crash, realizing that his identity had become inextricably linked to the drama between Brooke and Taylor. I keep thinking the past is behind us, that we can start again," he confessed to Eric one evening. "But every time, there's something else. Another lie. Another betrayal." Eric, ever the wise father, offered a different perspective. "You've spent your entire life torn between two women," he said. "Women who love you, yes, but also women who keep dragging you through emotional minefields. Maybe it's not about them, Ridge. Maybe it's about you. What do you want for your life that doesn't revolve around chaos and damage control?" The words hit home. For the first time in a long, long while, Ridge considered a third option. Not Taylor, not Brooke, but himself. For the first time, Ridge told Brooke when she finally got through to him, "I'm choosing me." He needed space from the drama, from the press, from both of them. He needed to figure out who he was outside of this torturous triangle. The Italian intruder and the final confrontation. Just as a fragile peace began to settle, a new storm gathered on the horizon. Luca Benedetti, the handsome and enigmatic Italian art mogul, made an unexpected appearance in Los Angeles. His press team framed the trip as a professional visit for an art exhibit, but insiders knew better. He arrived unannounced at Taylor's house, holding a bouquet of calla lilies, the very flowers from their Tuscan wedding. "Taylor, my love," he said in his lulling Italian accent. "Why did you never call me back? Why did you vanish?" He had seen her face in the tabloids, in a wedding dress, about to marry another man. "What did you think would happen?" he demanded. "That I would simply disappear?" Their confrontation was interrupted by the arrival of a chastened Ridge, who had finally agreed to see Taylor for what he intended to be a final, closing conversation. He walked in to find his ex-fiancée face-to-face with her legal husband. The air crackled with tension. But Luca was more than just a spurned lover. He was a master strategist. In a move of sheer brilliance, he revealed his true purpose in Los Angeles. He had reached out to Eric directly with a business proposition, a collaboration between his prestigious art foundation and Forrester Creations for a limited edition fashion and art crossover campaign. It was an offer too lucrative and prestigious for Eric, the businessman, to ignore. The proposal forced Ridge out of his emotional exile and into a professional minefield. He was now compelled to work with the man who had been at the center of his latest heartbreak. The boardroom became a new battleground, where personal anguish and professional ambition collided. The saga of Ridge, Taylor, and Brooke had become a quadrangle. The shattered wedding was no longer an ending, but the beginning of a new, more complex war. As Ridge stood at the precipice of a decision that would redefine his future, he was no longer just choosing between two women. He was choosing what kind of life he wanted to lead, and whether peace was a destination he could ever truly reach in a world built on beauty, betrayal, and the unrelenting drama of the Forrester dynasty. The story was far from over. A new chapter, darker and more unpredictable than any before, had just begun. Thanks for watching this videos. Please hit the subscribe button for more updated news.